Hello, everybody. This session for today will be on German aggression, German invasion of France, and some of the other countries that they're going to conquer in the beginning part of World War II. So let's get to it. All right. So obviously, as we talked about yesterday, or what we did yesterday in class, was the non-aggression pact, the agreement between Hitler and Stalin to not attack each other. They agreed to jointly attack Poland, split up Poland. Soviets will get the western or the eastern part of Poland, and the Germans will get the western part of it. Why? Because again, it was all lost lands they lost at the end of World War I. They wanted to reclaim them. There were still German and Russian-speaking people who lived there, so they wanted to again fix the wrongs that they felt they were wronged by at the end of World War I. So one of the strategies that the German army is going to implement in their invasion processes all throughout the beginning of World War II, something called the Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg means lightning warfare in German. And basically what that means that you do an all-out onslaught. You have your tanks, which they call the panzer divisions. You'd have your panzers. You'd have your motorized vehicles, as you see in this picture here, with the soldiers on motorcycles. You had airplanes bombing certain locations. You had paratroopers that flew in and hit certain roads. And basically the whole point of it was to overwhelm the enemy. You hit them with your whole kit and caboodle. You hit them with everything that you have. Overwhelm them. They surrender. You move on to the next one. That's really the whole point. Don't get bogged down in wars, in like little battles. You just conquer them all at once and you move on to the next place. So that's ultimately of what it was. Now, one of the things that's interesting, I was doing some reading about this and watching some documentaries on this. Because Hitler was asking a lot of his soldiers, hit and go, hit and go, hit and go, hit and go, attack quick, attack hard, and get out of there. People were trying to realize, well, how are the German soldiers able to do all this? Like they're marching, 12 to 16 hours a day. How is that humanly possible? How are they making up all this ground so quick? How are the German troops? How are they able to march as far as they were? Because again, as you'll see here in a little bit, they conquered many countries in a very short period of time. Well, we came to find out that the Germans were given, or Hitler ordered the soldiers to take this pill called Pervitin. Essentially, you see this picture on here. Essentially, it's speed. Basically, his soldiers were drugged up on speed. Now, that keeps you alert. That keeps you awake. That keeps you getting a lot more energy. So that's why they were able to do it. And by the end of the war, they start realizing that, German soldiers were hooked to this. They were drug addicts going through withdrawals. Plus the other thing too, when you're on a drug, you might be more braver than when you're not. So these soldiers were like super soldiers, willing to take risks and put their lives on the line, be more, braver than what they normally would be, by being on this drug. So other countries like Great Britain, they started kind of doing this on a small scale to try and keep up. So then you have something called the Phony War. There was a period of calm after Poland. So Poland was in September of 1939. Really from till May, there was a kind of a quiet period, I guess you can call it. Britain's going to move troops. Let me move this down a little bit. Britain's going to move troops to France to help with an expected German invasion. They know that France is going to be a target. Germany comes down, they help them, they help fortify some things in France. So Hitler will then go to Norway and Denmark in April of 1940. He wanted to avoid a possibility of a naval blockade. So if he has control, here's Germany. See by my little pointer down here. There's Denmark, there's Norway. If Germany can have access to this port here, they cannot be blockaded by Britain or France. Here's Great Britain right here. So having control of these areas for Germany was vital. They have to have access to get supplies in there. So that's why they focused on these two areas first to get naval supremacy in that area. So Germany will then launch an attack on Belgium and Holland and France starting in May 10th, 1940. So they get Denmark, Norway, short period of time, boom, boom, boom. Then they go and they focus more on mainland and Europe to get to Belgium and Holland and France. We're going rather quickly. So you see this map here, very similar to World War I. Now, the French and the British have to ask themselves, well, where are they going to attack? I mean, here's a pretty large area here where my cursor's at. That's a lot of land. It's a lot. That's a big border. So what do you do? Where do you think they're going to come from? By the way, here's Germany too. We're here in this green. So there is a portion where France and Germany, they do share a border. So they fortify a lot of this area right into here. You see by my cursor, this green line is that going to be fortified. They keep some military up through here as well. As you see, the British are in charge of the northern part of France, and the French have the interior right in through here, as you see. So France had believed that Germany would attack across their western border, which is, as I said, right here, where Germany and France actually share a border. So the French constructed a series of forts known as the Maginot Line. Highlight it in your notes. It's an important Maginot Line. It's a series of forts that you'll see all along this border here, and there's a picture right here. Now very similar to World War I. This Maginot Line stopped right about there, where that red dot is at the very top. So it went through this whole area here. Notice here's the Ardennes Forest, a very thick forest. Again, they didn't fortify that. That's where the Maginot Line did not go through that because they didn't think they would attack through that thick forest. Here's some other pictures that's just kind of showing you. Zoomed in view. So the whole line, that red dotted line, the last slide, was all Maginot Line. A big concrete fort system you see down through here where they kept where the men would go, and they had cannons and machine guns all in this area too to help fortify that area. So British and French troops became trapped by German forces at Dunkirk. Here's Dunkirk up here. This is where, again, Hitler makes another fatal mistake. So basically at this point, Germans attack, they get into France, and at that point you have the French and the British are on the run. They're going up to the coast. So here's the English Channel. Here's Great Britain up through here. So Hitler makes a call to basically not stop the effort of chasing him down, but ease it a little bit. He basically is gonna force his Panzer Division to turn back, keep the army going at him. They believe that the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, would have been good enough to hammer the beaches here to kill all of the British and French soldiers that were trapped at this beach head. They were basically surrounded. German thought the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, was going to be able to pulverize them. And he eased up on his military forces, his Panzer divisions and some of his men in the military. And he didn't want his lines to be overstretched and supply lines to be overstretched. So he's really worried about that. Hitler decided to turn over the onslaught to the Luftwaffe, as I said, which is the German Air Force. And that was a fatal mistake. If he would have kept charging and would have had them at Dunkirk, they would have surrendered. There were hundreds of thousands of British troops there. They would have surrendered. They would have had nowhere else to go. So we'll talk more about Dunkirk later, but that's like the basics of it, where what happened at Dunkirk basically is that because Hitler made that decision to stop forces and to just have his German Luftwaffe take care of it, the beaches, it didn't work. The British were able to send ships into Dunkirk and save hundreds of thousands of troops and bring them back. And what was kind of cool, a story about Dunkirk that they call it the miracle of Dunkirk, is that there were even British citizens who had a boat who took part and helped save these British soldiers that were trapped. So it was kind of a collective effort. It was kind of a cool story. You know, you have your military and you have civilians that helped out in the war effort to help the men get out of France. So the invasion of France was called Operation Dynamo. The decision by Hitler to hold back his army gave the British a chance to rescue. So I just talked about that with Dunkirk. British sent out a request for all available watercraft. So the volunteers, again, I already talked about that in the last 30 seconds ago. 338 British and French troops were rescued by 800 ships. So again, that was due to Hitler, not keeping the gas pedal down by turning around the Panzer divisions, and some of his men didn't want to overstretch his lines. And a lot of his military generals disagree with him. They wanted to keep the attack going. So again, that Operation Dynamo, I think I misspoke. That was the rescue mission for the British to help and rescue these soldiers. So with all those forces gone out of France, with Dunkirk, Allied forces, Britain, France, that were still left near Paris, they could not hold the forces back. So the main difference between World War I and World War II is that World War I, Germany was never able to capture Paris. They're about 45 miles outside. It started trench warfare. World War II, they captured Paris. France surrendered. June 22nd, 1940. Here's a famous picture of Hitler posing in front of the Eiffel Tower. So now France is basically out of the war. They surrender. That leaves Britain by themselves. But there still is some French resistance. So although the Nazis take over France, there is still French resistance. Charles de Gaulle, which is the leader of France, he'll become the leader of France in World War II. He'll form the Free French government. He lives in exile, but in exile, he's able to basically plan things. He coordinates with different groups that are in France to basically use guerrilla tactics to fight against Nazi commanders and rule in France. They're going to resist German rule. And he'll become the prime minister of France after World War II, and as well the first president. All right, so that is it for today. We'll talk about tomorrow how Britain was the last one left to fight. All right.